we're going to talk about the VOC, or the Verenigde Oostindische Compagnie, also known as the Dutch East Indies. And before we start, let's just answer this question real quickly. How much is it worth if it existed in today's world? And to give you an idea, it would be worth around $7.9 trillion, which is equivalent to the top 20 modern companies that exist today. That's pretty impressive. Now, we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to start with a formation and general description of the company. We're going to talk about its main activity, where did they operate, which European countries were competing with it, and the policies and actions that they did, and also the end, decline and fall of the company.
All right, so in order to understand how VOC was founded, it is necessary to take a look at the Netherlands in the 16th and 17th century. So back then, the country was controlled by one of the largest empires in history, which is the Spanish Empire. So as you all know, Dutch were merchant seamen for centuries. They were dependent on trading spices that come from Orient. However, they were not the only ones who were strong at trading. In fact, Portugal was dominating the market of spices. Therefore, the Netherlands was buying their goods from Portugal and reselling them to various countries on a profit margin. However, after Portugal fell under the Spanish Empire, they were no longer as efficient in spice trading as before. Therefore, Dutch merchants had to sail all the way to the Indian Ocean to find goods to sell. At first, each individual merchant tried to establish their own crew and sailing ship to afford going on a trip to East. But the success rate of these trips were almost non-existent because of harsh conditions. We should also note that the Dutch were not the only ones trying to succeed in overseas trading. There were also British, Spanish, and Portuguese crews that aimed the same thing, to dominate the market. So the best shot of Dutch to overcome this competition was to unify all of their merchants under one route. This was finally established in 1602 by the State General of the Netherlands' decision to create a united company that would serve as a monopoly in trade. So that company was called the United East Company, and that name is basically the Dutch East India Company as we call it today. The VOC was managed by a group of men called Heren 17. This council had such great power that their decisions were not only on behalf of VOC, but also on behalf of the state itself. They were allowed to, for example, train their own armies, declare wars, occupy land, and much more. And now you might be wondering, how did they find the capital to support all these voyages in the first place? This brings me to VOC's relation to capitalism. VOC created a company house in Amsterdam where people could invest in the company by buying shares. This is exactly the same principle of today's stock markets. Therefore, we can say that VOC is an historical example of capitalism. Also, because the shareholders expect a future return on their investments, VOC had to have a long-term business plan. So from the start, they were not only aiming for one trip. VOC first traveled to Indonesia and formed their headquarters in the island of Java over there. And from there on, they spread all the way throughout the Indian Ocean, where they gathered silk, spices, silver, and other goods. As you can tell, they were earning excessive amounts of profit, which were in fact mainly spent on building dikes all around the Netherlands to succeed in land reclamation.
Let's have a look at the rivalry with other European countries. This was mainly between the EIC, or the British East India Company, the Portuguese colonies in India and Southeast Asia, and also the Spanish colonies in Southeast Asia. These companies made a fierce competition with the monopolization of trade in the East, which gave it a rough time for the VOC to succeed. Even though these three countries were powerful, the Dutch managed to come out victorious, especially in a war with the English and the EIC, where they managed to control major trade ports and production centers in the region, obtaining enormous profits from trade. Now, in the trade, they had many different types of resources, but mainly they were trading nutmeg. They managed to control most productions of nutmeg in the region. They were also unfortunately trading slaves that were transported to Cape Colony in South Africa, which was another Dutch colony. And then from there, the slaves would go to the Americas. They were also trading silk and spices, and they were using their massive trade ships to transport these resources. Now, let's have a look at their policies. First of all, they were a multinational employment company. So they had employees from various European countries. They were the first ever company with shareholders, and the shareholders were divided in two. There were the bewindhebbers and the participanten. The first ones were the ones that managed the company, while the second ones only had shares and did not have any administrative power. Now, their headquarters was in Batavia, which is modern-day Jakarta, and that city allowed them to control trade because the trade flow went straight through the city and then to Europe. So they could have a stricter control and a better taxing of the trade. Now, they had various tactics to maintain this power in trade, from extortions to violent suppression of native populations. They were also known to destroying plantations to increase demand and profits. And they also forced natives to change their production to suit their needs. They also used war, especially with European provinces, to control more trade power and locations in the East Indies. And they did all of this with their own military and naval force. Now, let's talk about the decline and fall of this company. There was a lot of factors that lead to it, but here are the major ones. First of all, there was a major decrease in trade. This was due to the fact that there was a change in political powers in Asia, which led to the decrease of the company's trade rights. There was also a competition with the Oostindische Company, which was another Dutch trading company that worked all around the world. There was a period of corruption and bad management that led to an increase in debt and a decrease in profits. And then there was also the fact that there was a high employment mortality rate due to the dangerous travels, which upset a lot of shareholders, and they ended up leaving the company, which always reduces the worth of the company. But still, even though all of this happened, they were still one of the richest companies in the world. It was only with the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War that the VOC power decreased, leading to its downfall. It was then nationalized by the Dutch government in 1795, and it was abolished in 1799, with its territories becoming a Dutch colony that became the foundations for the modern country of Indonesia. Now, I want to end by saying that this company, even though it doesn't exist today, it definitely left a mark in the modern country of the Netherlands that we have today. And with that, I want to say thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.